can I just do an
Please go
introduction?
ahead.
Can I just introduce myself? Can I just introduce? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to introduce the session first, just to put a little bit of structure around this. And gosh, I jumped straight back into being a school teacher very, very quickly, even though it's been 25 years since I was last a school teacher. My name's Renza Scibilia. I think most of you would have seen me yesterday. I was here as part of the DDoC team, but today we're talking about one of my very favourite topics, and that's around storytelling and effective storytelling. So I believe what we're going to do is everybody's going to come up and tell us very quickly, and I say very quickly because we haven't got very much time, and Ronaldo and I want to talk. So we'll go group by group. You need to speak into a microphone, and I'm going to be timing you, and if you go for more than 2 minutes, I'm coming and taking the microphone off you because we want to hear from everybody. Okay. Go. Thank you.
Good. So you all can see the poster. It's a very handcraft. I'm Ricard. So just to start, I would like to ask how many of you have gone to the hospital and had any consultation and you got told something wrong. So you went there and said, I have a hyperglycemia, and they said you shouldn't eat sugar because it will kill you. Or have you ever gone to a doctor that said, yeah, diabetes is very bad and you're going to be killed in like 5 years? So I think we can all relate to these types of stories, harder or softer versions of these stories, but that was what guided us. So what we want is actually to improve the quality of these interactions. And we see that the problem of the interactions between the healthcare professional and the patient, or in this case ourselves, is that there's a lack of education or a lack of resources to improve these interactions. And we basically identified the problem as this lack of education and some complementary issues that might arise. For example, if someone tells you when you're young that you can't eat sugar, you're probably not going to eat for the rest of your life. I understand, I would do the same. And basically that's some of the complications that might arise. And here what we want to bring is some data, of course. So we want to bring some research that has been done. We want also to say that there's a statistics that show that a lot of people will need to go to a consultation at a certain point, and that it's important to have this access to quality education. For verify these or to validate these, we want to conduct surveys, or let's say that we already conducted the surveys and the results are favorable to our cause. So we did some surveys and they show that most of the patients did not felt comfortable when they had an interaction last time they went to the hospital. So combining these statistics, some of the surveys, we want to have the testimonials as well. So we want to have the healthcare professionals to tell us we don't have enough education, and they will not say this, but they will say that yes, we don't feel comfortable handling edge cases. Or,
okay, that's time.
Yes.
Next.
Perfect.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Sorry for...
No, that was perfect. No, I said 2 minutes.
I'll be outside.
You're very, very good. Okay, yes, go. Hello, Rhea. Lovely to see you. No, I won't start it until you pick up the microphone and start talking.
Thank you. Okay, so we tried to identify something that is a common problem between all of our countries, and we got to an idea that's very similar to yours as a problem, and that is education. Not just on a general population level, because obviously we've all been bullied at some point in our lives, but also for endocrinologists and the way that we are treated by them. However, our approach to solve this issue was a bit different from that. So our target audience was endocrinologists, but not just that, also the general population. So we're talking family members, teachers, rural communities, more than just, like the center of the cities. We got possible partners such as psychologists, law firms, policymakers. These would help us with their expertise in what they do, and then we could use their services in our projects. But what is the target and what is the strategy that we are following? So we suggested 2 levels, endocrinologists and doctors levels, basically diabetologists, 3 points we're going to tell them. How to be compassionate. We would give them leaflets of steps that they need to take and things that they need to take into consideration when they are talking to their patients, their language, whatever they say. Second of all, read the signs. When you see someone that is struggling emotionally, you go and you refer them to specialists when needed, because most of the times we don't see the signs as people living with diabetes. And as for the second part, which is the general population, this was actually proposed in Cyprus. That's what they're doing. So now Christmas is upcoming. So we can do an event, which is Blue Christmas, or where we have a blue Santa. So all of the kids are going to ask, why is the Santa blue? And everyone's going to say, well, that's because of diabetes. And we would give them just the top 3 symptoms that they need to watch out for. I'm done. Also, for the general population, you've got media and schools, like the games that Gavin told us for the kids. And finally, how do we measure them? For endocrinologists, we would give a QR code. Do you guys know Glassdoor? Who here knows Glassdoor for companies? We would have endo doors for endocrinologists. Every endocrinologist would have a QR code that would lead you to his endo door account where you would leave a message.
Put the microphone down and let's move on.
I'm done.
Very good. Amazing. Thank you so much. You speak faster than I do. That's amazing. All right, who's next? Sorry?
And I really like your ideas.
Yeah, they're great ideas.
It was Coca-Cola who changed the Santa color to red.
Okay.
Then, okay, let's change for blue.
Sorry? Oh, okay. Who wants to go next? We need somebody to go next. Yes, beautiful. Down. Oh, no, here. Sorry. We'll go here first. Yeah. Oh. Okay, you go first because you're standing up. No, we don't do ladies first. Come on. You go first. Let's go. Come on. Go.
Good afternoon. We have tried to outline our main ideas of our project, and our project will center in guarantee access to proper diabetic care in our community. We have put X municipality in our community. Why we need that? Because 3,000 of people living with diabetes in our community. There are 3,000 of people. From these 3,000 people, we have 2,020 that don't have an access to diabetes care. And what are the implications? 90% of these people are at risk of losing their lives because of diabetes complications. Hence, these are having direct impacts on society, because by 2025, we will have a decrease of 40% of the workforce will not be able to work. Then, what will be our objective with this project? Our objective with the project is to advocate to pass a law in our community to establish mandatory diabetic care system to people living with diabetes. That's why, because we don't have a law or a mechanism that guarantee diabetes care. That is policy change, that is a necessity, and we are going to afford it. Then, once we have declared our objective, we are going to target our community, our population, and specific our population living with diabetes, and we are build strong partnerships with relevant stakeholders in our community. One, we are going to gain endorsement of relevant NGOs of our community with the scientific endorsement of the Association of Endocrinologists in our community. Also, we are going to target and engage influencers and labor organizations due to the impact on workforce in our community. Then we are going to contact and work with the members of the Congress of our municipality to gain support from the draft proposal of law, and we are going to the media. Okay,
excellent. Very good. Move on. Wonderful. That's a lot. That's doing a lot. Okay. Where were those women who... Yeah, you're next. Let's go. No, these guys. Come on, let's go. You're next. Go. Quick. I'm very bossy. Okay, go.
No, I'm so embarrassed. Okay. So we thought about the lack of the psychological support that we don't get when we go to the hospital, and the family also doesn't get any access to that. So Our data showed us that 1 of every 42 people influenced by the stress, and the sugar blood is go higher every time you're getting more stress, and the depression goes up more than in diabetics people than the other people. Our goals is to 1 or 2 psychologicals in every hospital or take care in every other country. I'm so nervous, I cannot do it. I don't understand what you wrote. No, I need help here. Can you come? Please, come.
Okay, sorry. So the goal is psychological support after diagnosis, as well as throughout the years of the diagnosis for all types and also family members. The audience, we will try to approach Ministry of Health, also diabetologists or endocrinologists. Partners, so Diabetes Research Foundation, hospitals or psychological associations. So our strategy is to create a team that would create a forum. So on the panel there would be someone from the ministry, there will be head of hospital, endocrinologists, but also a lot of patients who could have a discussion about possibilities of psychological support. So the evidence is basically non-existent access to care of mental health, I think in most of the countries. And why we need the change, basically the cycle. When we are stressed, our results are not good, and they are not good because we are stressed. So the message is, by the end of 2023, people with diabetes should have access to proper psychological care in order to tackle the problem of prevailing mental health problem.
Move on, and it's a very noble thing. Okay. Who are we going? Yes, you can go next. Go. You're ready to go. Yep. Okay,
Yeah?
go. You're
Okay,
good.
can everyone stand up real quick? Real quick.
This is
Come on, let's
part
do
of
it,
your
let's do
2
it.
minutes.
Okay, so I want you guys to guess what's the top funded industry in the world.
Pharma.
Okay, have a seat. So the game didn't work, and this is an example of how storytelling is not always effective. Not really, I didn't plan it this way. But our slogan was, just a sec, how are we doing on time? Can I stop?
You've lost 30 seconds. You don't want me talking during your
plan
time.
kind of
Go.
Okay, so we we took our idea from the T1D index, which is starting with kind of the big data, to scare funders into kind of giving us money. So what we thought was add 8 years to a life by improving diabetes management through accessible technology, okay? So we wanted to start with a big number. We said the how, we said the why, and we said the who as well. I think that's that. Okay, so what we wanted to do was education, awareness. We're going to start with the big data. We're going to measure our progress. Don't do that, you're stressing me out. We're going to measure our data through participation, post-interviews as well. And our goals mainly are to achieve better access to technology by 2025. And that's it.
Whoa, you have another 30 seconds. All right, okay. Excellent. Yes, you can go next. Yes, their enthusiasm. Love it. Love it. I don't know. Okay, have you got the microphone? There we go. Okay, go.
So right now, 537 million people are living with diabetes. And by 2013, this number will increase by 20%. And unfortunately, this patient, all of them, they don't have access to the respectful educational program. So also, unfortunately, 3 of 4 people living with diabetes are located mostly in low and middle income countries. So our objective is to provide creative methods of healthcare educational program, combine it in 2 ways, either with traditional way, which are the textbook approach, or with lived experience in order to improve the quality of our condition our condition. Our second objective is to involve all types of healthcare givers, providers like private hospital, public hospital, NGOs, pharmacies, everyone, and also include parents in this healthcare educational program. So the main question, how we are going to do that? We are going to do that using the workshop, social media. We are going to create our own website, educational program, our YouTube channel, leaflets that we are going to leave them in the private hospital, in the doctor clinic, and activities, example, workshops of marathons and events. And how are we going to measure our activities and our program is like using questionnaires on social media, our reach on social media also. We are going to track the usage of leaflets using the QR code and how many people showed up during our events and activities. And that's it.
Well done. Okay, yes, you're next. Thank you for keeping in time. I'm going to wait until you get up there and you're holding the microphone. Everyone gets the same opportunity. Okay, all right. I'll go.
Hi. So we got lots of challenges in our region, and they just like they're related to each other. Like the access to the diabetes technology and the knowledge. And it's important to know that there are some regions that the professionals, the doctors, the nurses, doesn't get enough knowledge about technologies of diabetes and everything. So the government, they don't care, actually. Sometimes they don't care, and they don't take it serious. And because of that, we gave them the evidence that they will increase. Diabetic will be increased as fast as it can. And if we don't do the action, well, we can't control it anymore. So we got some solutions here, like giving some classes to the nurses, the doctors, to influence the government to do something about it, to take it serious. And about that, we're gonna get them some timelines to take it more seriously. Like there are lots of people living in diabetes and they're increasing. So if they don't do anything, it will increase and it will be out of control. Yeah, I think that's it.
Wonderful, thank you. Just like time. Has everyone, no, one more. Okay, go. This is the last one, I think. No, absolutely. Show us why we saved the best till last.
Okay, hi everyone. So the problem we want to tackle is the lack of supplies, because we think it's very related to saving lives. Why? Well, without them, we have diabetes complications, severe hypos or ketos, a shorter lifespan, and of course, death. We have some data. According to the IDF Atlas, 1.5 million people die because of diabetes, and it can be a consequence because they didn't have diabetes supplies, education, and of course, bad diagnosis. For example, in Mexico, one person needs $1,400 for diabetes supplies per month. But the Mexican family only have $900 of income per month. So do you eat or do you buy insulin? Both ways you die, starving or diabetes complication, right? So we want to call to action. We will get a special group, a team of health professionals and legal advisors to develop a special law in a 2-year project. The first year will be of the design of this law, and then all the legal mechanism of every country. And the second year will be to develop this project in the public hospitals and institutes to guarantee the access to supplies to every person for each country. That's it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, so we have got not long. We've got just over 15 minutes left, and so we're going to be really quick. I'm going to start. So amazing, amazing, amazing. Thank you to everybody. So here's the deal. You all live with diabetes and you all have your own stories. And when you are asked to be in an advocacy setting, you bring something that everyone else doesn't. So I work for a diabetes organisation. I often work with diabetes health professionals. I work with researchers. I work with industry. I work with members of parliament and policymakers. But I come with something different, and I come with my story. So when I have often 2 minutes to talk, because that's often all we get, it's not my place to talk stats. It's not my place to talk about, you know, what the policy is in my area. It's my place to tell my story, because no one else can do that. People connect with stories. They don't connect with statistics. They really don't. Statistics are dry. They're too big. When we talk diabetes, diabetes is such a big issue. But you have the ability to bring all of those big numbers back down to one, and that is you. And only you can do that. Okay, now when we see people saying that we are the voice of, or we're the voice for people with diabetes, that really, really annoys me, because we don't need people to speak for us. We have our own voice. When somebody says we're the voice of people with diabetes, what effectively they're doing is silencing us. We want to hear the stories of people with diabetes because they are incredibly, incredibly powerful. Now, I was asked to sort of look at and talk about, you know, how to tell stories effectively and what that looks like. And the deal is this. Nobody gets to tell you how to tell your own story. No one tells you what tone to use. No one tells you what language to use. And I say that as someone who is all about language. I would never, ever tell another person with diabetes how to tell their story and the words to use to tell that story. That is all on you. You get to say it in the way that diabetes affects you, because that is your story. Don't ever, ever, ever underestimate the power of what you have to say when you are talking about your lived experience with diabetes. No one else can do that. Advocacy only ever works when we hear about how things impact people directly. Now, I believe Jenna may have spoken a little bit earlier about CGM. No, she didn't. But you were talking about CGM in Australia. This year, we were very fortunate and we're delighted, and after 15 years of hard work, we now have CGM for all people with diabetes, with type 1 diabetes. Now, you know what? We could have stood up there and spoken about the evidence, could have talked about the statistics, talked about how much money it was going to save by giving CGM to all people with type 1, and that's really important. But that alone would not have got us where we are today. The reason that we have CGM for all people with type 1 diabetes was because the type 1 diabetes community in Australia was incredibly generous in sharing their stories. We needed the two. We needed the two together. I am always talking about hearts and minds. We, as people living with diabetes, we bring the heart stuff. No one else can do the heart stuff. We do that. The other people can do the mind stuff. Together, it's incredibly powerful. But we need those stories. So my message to you today is your stories are incredibly, incredibly powerful. When you see advocacy efforts happening in your diabetes organisations, they need to be making sure that the stories are part of it. And if they're not already, get in there. And it has to be people with diabetes telling those stories. That is the important thing that you can bring. And I think that often, you know, that lived experience is not valued the way that it should be and the way that it needs to be. It is an expertise, and I want you to remember that. So when you're put on a panel and you're told, oh, we've got all these health experts and we've got you, your expertise is just as critically important. The sessions here that have worked the best at this conference and at every other conference is when there is somebody with lived experience telling the story of how, whatever it is that's being discussed, what that means to the individual. I'm going to stop there and I'm going to throw it over to Ronaldo, and then we might see if we've got any questions as well, but I'll leave it there.
Well, actually, I would like to... Please. Let's be... I don't speak that quickly as Renza, and okay. For those who don't know me yet, my name is Ronaldo. I'm a YLD alumni from 2013. Yes, 9 years ago. How many of you here had diabetes 9 years ago? Woo! Nice. Okay. Well, first of all, I need to tell you about storytelling. Have you ever felt yourselves connected to stories? This is really wired into our genes, into our brain, hardwired into our brains. Back in 10,000 years ago, when humanity first appeared in Mother Africa, we used to join us all over around a fire to hear stories. And this is what we connect. This is how we connect one each other. Because human beings do not connect as through statistics or through data, rough data, but by emotions. Then, among all suggestions we got for our advocacy suggestions here in the activity, you told me that you wanted to bring Santa blue. I really like it because it will raise an emotion. Why are we putting Santa blue? Then you can connect people through emotions. I am pretty sure that you all have incredible stories. Stories that can raise good and bad emotions, sad things and happy things with diabetes. And when you have the 1 minute for an elevator talk, should I say that? 1 minute for an elevator call, this is how you should proceed. Do not try to shoot statistics. And come on, my master's is in public health. I work with statistics nearly every day. But you don't want to shoot statistics at the people. You want to call her. You want to have a bond with her, with her condition as pharma industry, as an advocate, as organization, NGO, any kind of people. Then, just think about your own story. 10 seconds for you, think about your own story with diabetes. How were you diagnosed? How did you felt? You are all thinking. And what brought you in here? To work with diabetes. Then think how you can tell this story in 1 minute for someone. Yes, it may sound like, oh my God, I'm going to have only 1 minute, Renza, to tell me my story.
I'm hyper right now. I can't even say my own name.
Okay, well, so I will tell you my story, and you can use this as an example. I was first diagnosed when I was 2 years old. Okay, I'm 31 now. Okay, I'm now an old leader. It's a pretty joke. And yeah, you see, a laugh. Then happiness, it's an emotion. And when I was diagnosed, I haven't met no one with diabetes. I first met someone with diabetes when I was 14, and when I was 17, I met a girl. A girl with diabetes, okay? It was our camp, our diabetes camp, and we met, we had a great connection, and we started to date. See the emotions, they're getting the trend of this. And we started to date. She was my girlfriend for a long, long time. And it was the Easter of 2011, shortly before I joined the medical school. She would be traveling with her family, and why should I bother? Come on. My father and mother-in-law were traveling with her. Why should I bother? Then I had my time that Easter playing video games. I like to play video games nowadays. And a friend of ours, a common friend of ours, called me. I was like, hey, why are you calling me? It's a thriller now. And I grabbed the phone. Hey, how are you? Hey, Ronaldo, have you ever heard about Stephanie? Yes, she's traveling with her family. Why should I know something I like? And then this friend of ours told me, Stephanie had died. Died. What happened? I felt like the floor opened below me, and some things got a huge blur from that time. But what we all know is that an infection, I don't know if it was a pneumonia, an urinary infection, anything, but started a DKA, and she ultimately died. Then, something that happened when I was with her mother, side with the casket, she gave me a hug and told me, please take care of yourself, because I don't want this to happen for nobody in this world. Then this pressed the switch in my brain to devote all my life to fight diabetes. Okay, I have had therapy, psychologist support. It's good for you to have as well. Come on, let's open the humor as well. But this story, it's my personal story. And I know that you have powerful stories, as powerful as this one. And you need to tell people these stories, because these stories are the ones that motivate. Your stories, our stories, are the drivers of change. And when people, those people there in suits, you know, like speakers and titles and Professor Dr. Ronaldo Pineda, come on. Some of them never heard about these stories. And we need to hear these stories from you. Because it's not for data we are working. We're working for people. We're working for you. We are working for ourselves. Then I think it's this. Thank you.
We do have a couple of minutes for questions. I said there are no rules when it comes to telling your story. I just want to add a little caveat to that. There's no rules telling your story. But if you're going to tell someone else's story, and you're telling your story here, this is your story that involves someone else, but it's your story and your reaction, so I'm not referring to you here at all. But if you're telling someone else's story, you need to get their consent to do that. And I say this because I'm guessing a number of you were probably diagnosed as kids, as children, and I wonder how many of you have had your stories told by family that perhaps you may not have given your consent for that story to have been told, especially now. And this is something that's actually quite a tricky conversation to have, because parents have their own stories, right? The parents have stories of what it's like to be a caregiver of a child with diabetes, but they're not living with diabetes themselves. And this is a really tricky conversation that I often have with parents and family groups, is that when you tell your kid's story from the perspective of, I haven't had a night's sleep since my kid was diagnosed with diabetes, or I feel really burdened because my child has diabetes, your kid is hearing this. And what they're hearing is that they are a burden, right? So if you're telling someone else's story, you need to have their consent, and you need to tell it in a way that they're comfortable with. I think that's something that's really, really important, something to be mindful of. Telling your own story, you get to say it any way you want. It's your story. But when it's someone else's, you need to make sure that you're not adding more burden to them because they feel that they have burdened you. So that's just something else to think about. We literally have 2 minutes. So yes, we've got a question. Oh, yes.
Hi, sorry. So my question is, we are often told that we should use data to support our arguments, especially if we want to push advocacy, let's say, on a higher level to policymakers. And I know personal story is important as well. But which one to choose? Can we combine it somehow? Because you are saying the story is important, don't use the data. But how how to find a silver lining?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Okay, so I see well-rounded advocacy as having a bit of everything, right? But often our role there is to tell stories. So if you're doing it on your own, if you're writing a letter to a local MP, a member of parliament, or to a local councillor, tell your story in there and put a little bit about the data. But if you're on a stage or on a platform where there are people with different disciplines, so you've got the people taking care of the data, don't use that. But the thing that people, especially politicians, are going to fall in love with and go, that's the story I want to tell, is when you tell your personal story and you talk about how it affects you. And that was the stories that won the hearts of the politicians in Australia when we were talking about CGM. It was people getting up there and saying, I need to use this. I've been able to use it because I've had a sample or because I could afford it or because somebody helped me pay for it. And this is what it meant to me every day. It meant that I felt better. It meant, and talking about their own life in there. Use data in a way that is really accents your story and highlights it, but it's your story that's got to be the bit that shines through. Because while you're doing your advocacy, I would hope that alongside there are the organisations and the healthcare professionals also doing their advocacy as well. They're not going to be telling the stories, and if they are, they probably haven't got consent to be telling those stories anyway, and also it's not going to be as powerful. They'll be taking care of the statistics and the data.
I think that's a valid point to say that stories raise questions. I'm pretty sure that all of you now started to think, how many people are dying of DKA due to infections? Because, hey, it happened with someone I know. Then, when people have these questions, you can use data. Nah, you will use data. But by shooting them data directly towards their face, it would be somewhat rude, and they won't hear you at all. But after raising questions, making them interested in data, you can use them without any problem.
Also, you've got to remember, no one can dispute your story and tell you that you're wrong, but they can ignore data, right? They just can. But they can't ignore a person saying, I've stayed out of hospital for the last 6 months. And then if you want to add some data, talk about how much you've saved by not being in hospital for 6 months.
It's not exactly a question, more as a comment, because I've been recently in ISPAR in Abu Dhabi, and in one of the symposiums, they were talking about DKA and patients with type 1 who have been diagnosed during DKA. And it was a debate about genetic testing. And since we don't have a cure, it was a debate about whether or not it's ethical to make the person live in this fear that I might have diabetes at some point in my life. And then someone said that it prevents DKA because then you can notice these subtle symptoms, So a doctor comes up and says, yeah, but that's a very small percentage that we don't need to talk about. It's not important enough for the patients that have died because of DKA. And during that conference, well, I was diagnosed with during DKA, and I was like blind and I couldn't breathe. And when I stood up and I told them my story, the doctor just took a moment to himself where he just reflected and thought that, okay, they're not just numbers. And I think that's the importance also of a story, like you guys just said, because when they see numbers, they don't care. But when they hear stories with the numbers, that's when they realize the effect of it.
Absolutely.
Histories bring humanity to data.
Have we got any last comments or questions before we disappear and you all go and have photos taken or something, I believe? No. All right.
And of course, I'm pretty sure that we'll be here for any questions they have after session.
No, I've got to rush off to another session.
Oh, okay,
yes, we've got one question.
I will be, okay. No.
Yeah, go. Yeah, hang on, you need a microphone apparently. Okay.
We don't need the mic because they are recording.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. Ronaldo. So I'm just wondering, the story you said has a very huge emotional impact, huge. And I'm really sorry you went through that experience, and thank you so much for sharing. It's just that with how many times you've told the story, how's that because I do that as well. I tell a lot of stories whenever I'm giving workshops or talks. It's just my way of telling something. I just tell stories. So how has it impacted you over time? Did you desensitize when it comes to the story?
That is such an amazing question.
It's still bringing tears to my eyes every time I tell them. If it's yours, these are your emotions. And you don't need to be shy about them. Share them. Because we're sharing emotions. We're sharing stories. It's hardwired in our brains that we want to share connections and share emotions with other people. And every time I tell this story, it brings tears to my eyes.
Stories have such impact. So I write a blog because I think it's 10 years ago. And I can't tell you the number of times, excuse me, even after, things that I've written, that I wrote 10, 15 years ago, that people will reach out to me and say, your blog helped me make sense of my own diabetes because of your story. That story resonates with me. And so there is such power in story. I write to a little, my website, and I then post it out there. And when I first started writing, it was my mum and some guy in Romania who was reading it and was commenting every single day, which was very lovely. And I still think that I'm writing for two people. But people write back and they say that they connect with the story. When I write pieces in my day job where I talk about data and when I talk about, the impact of something and I look at numbers, no one ever says, oh gosh, that really touched me. That really meant something. People go, that's interesting. That's great. Awesome. But nobody ever says, that really helped me make sense of my own diabetes. That's what the power of storytelling is. I think we've got time for, one more question.
Thank you. It's not a question, it's actually something to share. So as a part of my project, we made a podcast in Arabic that talks about diabetes. And in some of the episodes, so we talked about preventing diabetes, dealing with children, dealing with elderly. And one of the episodes, we talked about diabetes burnout. And in that episode, we brought a psychiatrist, and we brought someone who has dealt with diabetes burnout. So in all of our episodes, we bring both healthcare professionals and people who live the experience. And all the comments on each episode talk about how the personal experience have impacted them more than the data or the information that they gained from the healthcare professional. Don't get me wrong, both is important. However, the stories that we share have the most impact to other people, patients or people who are living with diabetes, and also anyone else. And the impact is great.
I think we're all done.
I think it's over.
Thanks so much for having us here. Enjoy the rest of the
conference. Thank you very much.